Hello and welcome to this edition of Press Conference with Jim DeLorenzo. That's me. I'm a principal of Jim DeLorenzo Public Relations. You can find me online at jimdelorenzo.com. In my career, I've had the good fortune to meet many interesting people, and my guest today is certainly foremost amongst them. I've known Bill Rasmussen, the founder of ESPN, since we first started working together in the summer of 2008. And it's been a nice experience to have him in my life and in my career. Bill started ESPN from a shoestring, $9,000 credit card advance, and that was in the summer of 1978 that he got started. And many of us today do not know a world without ESPN or 24-hour news and cable TV access. But Bill is the man who changed the way we watch TV, the way we watch sports. He is the man that had the vision and the dream for 24-hour cable sports. Went on the air September 7th, 1979, the brainchild of my guest today, Bill Rasmussen. Bill, I'm so grateful to have you on the show.
Hi, Jim. I'm happy to be here. Good to see your smiling face. It's been too long.
It has been too long since we've been in one place together, so I'm very happy that our technology as it is allows us to engage this way. And we're all learning new things about technology. And one of the things that always strikes me about you, for those of you who don't know Bill might be one of the greatest entrepreneurial success stories of our generation or of our time. And you were the director of communications for the Hartford Whalers of the World Hockey Association. Take me from that description to the impetus for ESPN.
Well, they were the New England Whalers then, playing in Hartford. They were in their fourth season. WHA was in its fourth season, and every one of them was a struggle. And when the Whalers, who had won the cup, the championship cup the year before, when they didn't win it the second time, suddenly it was Memorial Day weekend. The season was over, and I was heading to play golf. I got a call from Colleen Howe, if you know that Gordy and Colleen and the two boys all migrated to Hartford. And I was working with them as well as with the Whalers, and I'm on my way down to the first tee, and I get a phone call. Not a cell phone, by the way. It was just before I went out of the house. And it's Colleen, and she said, Bill, she kind of, I wish I didn't have to do it this way, but we don't want you back, and neither does Howard. Talk to you when I get back. She was on her way to vacation. So that was my, I guess that was my HR interview.
Yes, that was your exit interview. That was your severance package, everything all wrapped up in one short telephone conversation.
Right. And that was on Memorial Day weekend, 1978. And we had been talking about doing some different things and trying to videotape some things for this Connecticut cable systems. There were only 5 systems in Connecticut then, and the biggest one only had 9,500 subscribers. Can you imagine?
Yeah, and it's hard to believe now, looking back on it.
And we've been doing some work with the University of Connecticut to try and get some of their games around the cable systems, and it was just a difficult thing to do. However, we persisted, and then one day one of the cable operators said to us, this whole thing that you're trying to do sounds like a good idea, but I know a guy that's in the satellite business in New York, I think it's a RCA Americom, he said. He got a phone number for me, and I called the RCA Americom in New York, and quite startled when the young man on the phone said, "Where are you in Connecticut?" And I told him where we were. We were in Plainville, Connecticut, which is right next to Bristol. And he said, "I'll be up there in the morning." And he came up and he told us all about this wonderful thing called a satellite. I had no idea what was going to happen.
I love how you describe it as I don't even know how to spell satellite.
That's right.
Yes.
I still don't to this day. If I ask you quick, I always stump people on that.
But this was the crux of the brainstorm. Was you're having this meeting, you rented an office space for $25 from the cable company.
That's right. It was a conference room. We were renting this conference room.
And the guy from RCA comes to visit you. First of all, what might be hard to believe for some people today watching this is that you picked up the phone, dialed his number, the guy picked up, made an appointment, was there the next day. So there was an immediate connection through what would now be, firewalls and security and all these other things that did not exist in that interaction.
That's exactly right. And he came up and he told us about all the things they could do. If you recall, HBO was doing movies 5 hours a night at that time. And RCA had launched this satellite, SATCOM-1, in December of 1975. And basically, other than some military usage, and HBO was kind of flying around half empty. And so, since we already had that $9,000 committed, we didn't have money to talk to him about. But he told us about all the different rates, and they said there's another one that we have that's 24 hours a day and it's $34,167 a month. He said nobody ever buys one of those though. Well, $34,167 was a lot of money since we didn't have it. But we said thank you, and he went on his way. And Scott and I, my son Scott and I, talked about it that night, and he said, "That can't be right." He said, "It's $1,250 an hour for HBO for 5 hours a night, and this is like $1,134 a day, 24 hours a day, every day of the month." So we called him back the next day, called the operator back, and the fellow from RCA, and said, "Al, we'll take one of those." And he said, "One of what?" "I didn't even know you call it a transponder, Jim." And we said, "One of those," and I can remember sitting at the phone and just doing this, one of those 24-hour things.
Yeah, I think that's hysterical.
He said, "You will?" And that's the way it started.
And you were the first in the country to buy this package from RCA for the satellite time.
Yep, very first one.
But the other interesting thing, and I think sometimes people lose track of this, you're bootstrapping this. You're doing this on your own, and RCA's rep tells you about the payment schedule. And what was the impetus what was the interesting thing about the payment schedule?
Well, it was $34,167 a month for 5 years.
Okay.
So it was a lot of money, but it didn't make any difference to us because we didn't have any at that point. But it sounded like a good idea, and we decided because they thought it was a good idea. What we didn't know is that they had been having trouble selling. Obviously, they hadn't sold any. What we also didn't know was that they were willing to find anybody who had an idea for 24 hours. They wanted to work with them. It would have been nice if I had known that going in, but
sure.
I didn't.
You could have negotiated a little bit more.
But I think the other big ally, actually.
The other thing I think it's interesting about that, though, was when you had to make your first payment.
Exactly, because of their being so anxious to get somebody to commit to a 24-hour transponder. They agreed to give us the transponder and would not bill us until 30 days from our first use of that transponder. Remember, this discussion was in July and August that this was going on.
Of the summer of '78.
Until the following September of 1979. But we had an occasion to do a demonstration event on the 15th of October. I remember because it was my birthday. We're going to do a demonstration event at the University of Connecticut. And then we said, wait a second, if we use our transponder, we're going to get a bill in 30 days, and it's going to be $34,167.
That you don't have.
Well, we don't have. So we called Kay Koplovitz, who was with, then it was Madison Square Garden Sports, and now USA Network. And she agreed because they were doing those, I think they were doing a game a night or something.
Yeah.
And she said they weren't doing, I just checked to see if they had some time. And she said, we're not doing any game that night. Sure, you can use our transponder. So I don't know, we paid $100 or $200 or whatever, so token amount to do our first game. And so that was in October, and we didn't use our own transponder until January of 1979, which meant that we weren't going to get billed until the end of the month. And then we had 30 days to pay, which took us to the end of February. And all that while, we were negotiating with the NCAA and everybody else, and as luck would have it, on February 14th, Getty said they would fund us. The NCAA said we would go to work on a contract, and on March 1st, we signed the contract with the NCAA.
Wow.
And we were able to, because now Getty was a sponsor, they put up $10 million just to kind of get a long fund, to get started. We were able to meet the RCA schedule, and as you said earlier, the rest is history.
Now, in that process, you've got the satellite agreement, you've got the NCAA agreement. You had gone, before that takes place, or between the satellite agreement and the NCAA agreement, you had gone around to various venture capital groups and entrepreneurs, or VCs, I should say, and presented your idea. How many different venture capital groups did you go to?
We went to seven before we got to Getty. Getty was the 8th one.
And why was Getty interested?
Pardon?
Why was Getty an oil conglomerate? Why was Getty interested?
It was interesting because we had a small investment firm from King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, who was finding these venture capitalists for us. We had hired them, really. I had done some work with them at Farmington Woods, where I lived in Connecticut, while I was still with the Whalers. And so they were logical people to talk to, and they decided they would help us. And they set up every single one of our investing visits, so to speak. And finally, after the 7th one said no, they said, maybe there's a shot. I don't know. Getty Oil has just asked us to help them sell a hotel in Hawaii. Maybe if we send you the guy that's got that in mind, he might have an idea. And so, long story short, I did go visit Getty. It was a fellow by the name of Stuart Eby. He was interested, and eventually I met him on December 8th, and on Valentine's Day, which was, a little over 2 months later, they decided to invest $20 million.
Wow.
And the answer to the question I'm frequently asked, how do you start a network? Well, in our case, it was easy. $9,000 credit card cash advance, and ultimately $145 million from Getty. Voila, instant network.
That's an interesting way to start a network. But what I think is interesting too in your story, Bill, is that you're an entrepreneur who has an idea. You're taking it to potential venture capital partners, and they're turning you down. But you kept sticking with it, and you found the right one at that time that was interested in your idea. And I think that persistence of vision, if you will, that idea of all entrepreneurs and business owners who are starting something up face that same dilemma to a smaller scale than what you end up doing. But there's always that failure, if you will, that feeling of failure when someone says no. And you've got an interesting acronym that I've heard you use over the last few years, ABC, NBC, and that's the guy who came up with the 4-letter network. I always find it interesting that one of your mottos is ABC, NBC.
Yeah, or NBC. Really, ABC is not the network. It's really always be curious, and NBC is never be complacent. And I really think that's what you have to do. You just, every day when you get up, you can be positive or negative. And I just choose to be positive. I think it was Babe Ruth. Every time, he struck out more than he hit home runs, and they asked him one day what he thought about when he struck out. He said, didn't bother him at all. He was one at bat closer to his next home run. I think that's the way entrepreneurs have to feel. You get a no, okay. You keep saying, it doesn't make any difference how many no's you get, as long as you get just one yes. And you're in business, and we got that one yes.
You can take it from there. I'm going to take a quick break for some commercial messages here on RVN TV, but we'll be right back after these messages with Bill Rasmussen.
Number 7.
Number 8.
9 regular. Oh, wait. 13 giant. The usual?
Of course. Number 1.
Jersey Mike's, a sub above.
Today's show is sponsored by Dr. Jacqueline. Take charge of your life personally, financially, and professionally. Visit drjacqueline.com to book an appointment today.
Hey everybody, my name is Ralph Graves Jr. I'm the host of the Ralph Graves Jr. Show, and I want to invite you to pick up my book, Unstoppable. I wrote a book called Unstoppable. It's 7 universal laws that will transform how you pursue and achieve success. The one thing that my 20 years of law enforcement has taught me is that no matter who you are, we are all governed by universal laws, like gravity. But in this book, we're going to talk about laws like the law of forgiveness, laws like the law of control, the law of intelligent practice, the law of expectancy. I was able to see how those, no matter what their background was, those who identified and treated these laws with respect, they were able to go on and lead successful lives. So pick up this book, and you can go ahead and pick it up at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, RalphGravesJr.com, where anywhere where fine books are sold. Thank you.
Welcome back to Press Conference on RVN TV. I'm your host, Jim DeLorenzo, and my guest today is the founder of ESPN, Bill Rasmussen. And we've been discussing, Bill, the beginnings of ESPN, your entrepreneurial vision and your persistence of vision to get the network on the air, debuted September 7th, 1979. And as I was having a conversation with someone this morning of a younger generation, I described it as, today we take for granted that there is such a thing as ESPN or 24-hour television. And we look at it, people look at it as basically air, water, TV. And for people like me who grew up in that era, and when you grew up in an earlier era, it wasn't that way. And it took persistence of people like yourself, like a Ted Turner and a few other people to really get that going. Before I ask you my next question, I wish you could recount for us your interaction with Pete Rozelle, the commissioner of the National Football League, as far as your first conversation with him and then what happened later.
Well, as we've already said, always be curious. Never be complacent. You have to not be afraid to ask questions. And in 1978, 79, in that time frame, obviously, if we're going to do a sports network, we had to talk to the NFL and Major League Baseball and the NHL and NBA, everybody. And I remember going, the most significant one that sticks in my mind is going to Pete Rozelle. He was happy to accept the meeting. Had no idea what we were talking about, as I recall. But we went in and I explained what ESPN was going to be. And he thought it was an interesting idea, but wasn't ready right at that moment to make any kinds of commitments. But I remember him saying as I was leaving, thanking me for coming in, and he said, "Not today, Bill, but someday." Someday came in 2005 when they got the contract and did their first Monday Night Football game in 2006. They had already done several NFL games during the 90s, of course. But to get to the Monday Night Football, when I saw that announcement,
that must have been real overwhelming for you.
That was special.
Yeah. Gosh, I can just imagine the interaction between you two, and it's just such a compelling entrepreneurial story, really, because here we are later. ESPN is what it is, TV is what it is, sports is what it is. One of the other things I always think about when I think about you and that formative time is the conversations with TV Guide. Now, a lot of people might not remember TV Guide of a certain age. Some of us do remember, but TV Guide was the arbiter of what was on TV and what mattered on television. It was a little digest-sized magazine. It was about this size, and it would come out once a week, and it had all the listings for all the shows in your area and had a lot of editorial content. And they came back to you when you went on the air and said, what?
We can't list you because real networks only have 3 letters.
Real networks only have 3 letters.
So I guess they decided we were not a real network.
That is
But
such a great idea. That only three letters could only combinations of 3 letters.
There are 2 points to that. When they finally did list us, they listed us as ESN because letters only have 3 letters. And the other thing is, at that time when that magazine, that as you described it, their guide, they were doing basically ABC, NBC, and CBS. There was no Fox then either.
Right.
And they signed off at 1 o'clock in the morning. And the total sports that it did collectively between them amounted to maybe 1,300 or 1,400 hours. To put that into perspective, 8,760 hours in a year. And we were saying we're going to do 8,760 hours of programming, and they're doing 500 hours. So, you're going to come and watch us.
But you're not a real network.
Nobody believed it would happen, obviously. Everybody said, yeah, right. Oh, no way. And just as an interesting update, in the year 2019, remember 8,760 hours in 1 year. In 2019, ESPN on all of its various platforms did 84,341 hours, which is just a little bit more than 9.5 years of sports, 24 hours a day in one single calendar year.
Wow.
So talk about the choices that sports fans have today versus what they had when we came up with this crazy idea. It's pretty significant.
That is amazing when you think about it like that. The numbers don't lie sometimes. Sometimes they do lie.
A lot of viewership, a lot of watching television, sports on television.
That's for sure. We've all been going through a phase recently where we're missing our sports on TV. Hopefully some of it will come back. Some might not come back as quickly as others. But one of the things that's interesting to me in your career, you've done other startups, you've had other businesses that you've been involved with. Now you're involved with something completely different, but athletics is a big part of it because of being physically fit and actively exercising. Could you tell me about your new role as an ambassador for the Michael J. Fox Foundation and for the other foundations that deal with Parkinson's disease? Can you tell me why, what was the origin of that?
I can tell you because for some reason, Parkinson's is kind of an orphan disease, and people are kind of almost embarrassed or ashamed to say they have Parkinson's. They refuse to go to a doctor because they don't want to hear the bad news because they're not fully informed. Why is my hand shaking? Why is my leg? Why don't I sleep? Any number of things that are symptoms of Parkinson's. And it's kind of like people are embarrassed. And my role with Michael J. Fox and with the APDA is to say, there's nothing wrong with this. We can't solve the problem if you don't come and tell us what all the problems are. So we want to recruit people for research. Michael J. Fox is probably the biggest Parkinson's disease research group. And I'm on a couple of committees. And the main thing is, I guess the simple explanation is I'm kind of an awareness ambassador because people like to hear about sports. They know about ESPN. Mention ESPN and Michael J. Fox. Now everybody knows what you're talking about.
Sure.
And we really want to get as many people as possible to recognize the symptoms early so that we can get research for people who have just discovered they have Parkinson's, who have had it for a number of years, who had young onset Parkinson's, maybe when they were 20 or 25 or 30 or 35 or 40, and learn, hopefully, how to find a cure for Parkinson's, because right now there is no known cure. And as the doctors say frequently, you won't die from Parkinson's, you'll die with it.
Right.
But it's going to be uncomfortable along the way. No two people react to the disease the same way. Everybody has different reactions, different feelings. Some have cognitive problems remembering things. Some it's a walking difficulty, some it's shaking hands. It could be any number of things. And trying to find a medication or some treatment has been just baffling to the experts in the medical field. And so we can raise the awareness, get people to volunteer for these various research studies, not be embarrassed, but face it head on and be optimistic. I wake up in the morning, I'm going to do this.
Right.
Doesn't make any difference if you have Parkinson's or not. I can come I can still throw a first pitch. I can still sing a Broadway tune. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to go there, Jim, because I see you smiling. But one of the things that I talk to the Parkinson's people about is a line that you'll remember from MAME, actually, since I've mentioned it. And that's open a new window, open a new door, and travel a new highway you haven't tried before. And that's what Parkinson's is. None of us have been down this highway. So go ahead and jump in and tell us what you find. And that's really what we're trying to do with Michael J. Fox, with the American Parkinson's Disease Association, APDA, and really all Parkinson's. People who suspect they have Parkinson's, go find out. That's my goal.
When did you get your diagnosis, Bill? How old were you?
2014. How old was I? I've got to do this now. I was 82.
Okay.
So I was lucky. I went a long time before I got my diagnosis.
Okay. And in the last year or so, you've been very active with the awareness, going out there and speaking to people.
Yes, I mentioned it wherever I'm speaking. And ESPN's 40th anniversary, we did a country tour, as you know.
Yes.
Even a guy my age threw out the first pitch at a Fenway Park game against the Yankees, Red Sox and Yankees. So that's the whole point of this. And since I'm very positive about it. No one knows what life has in store for us, but if we can be positive, be optimistic, be curious, ask questions, never be complacent. And I don't know, you might have heard my friend Dick Vitale, who you know, obviously. He says, you have to greet every day, is the way he says it. Greet every day with enthusiasm, excitement, and energy, and so on. And that's really the same thing that I'm doing. I want to wake up and do something positive every single day from the moment I get out of bed.
It's really wonderful and inspiring. Every time I speak with you or every time I'm in your company, Bill, I'm inspired by that. I hope our viewers today can gather some of that enthusiasm and that passion in your voice and your positive nature. I think that is something we can all learn from, and I think that what you're doing for the Parkinson's awareness right now is so important. You mentioned to me earlier that there hasn't been a breakthrough in specific drugs for Parkinson's since the 1960s. Which is why we need to have more people getting involved as participating in studies and getting involved and sharing their symptoms and sharing their stories so that we can find the next great drug to help people with Parkinson's.
Exactly. And we invite anyone to get in touch with any of the with Michael J. Fox, with APDA, the Parkinson's Foundation. There are any number of ways that you can help by not hiding what you have, by not being embarrassed. Come forward and let's solve this thing together.
And be positive at all times about what you're up to. There may be a good day or a bad day, but hopefully your good days outnumber your bad days.
Oh, no question.
Absolutely.
They sure do. And I've got too many. I've still got to do the 50th anniversary, and that's not till 19. When would that be? 19?
That would be
2029.
2029. Yep. 2029.
Yeah, 2029, and I got to get to 100, so that's 32. So and I'm writing a book and doing the Parkinson's things and trying to stay active and exercise, walk the neighborhood. I've got a lot of new friends. They're all first graders or younger, but the pandemic has expanded my social group.
Yes, that's great. That's a great way to look at it. Well, Bill, I really am grateful for your time today. We're running out of time here for the show, but I want to thank you, and I want to encourage our viewers, if you're looking for additional information and would like to get in touch with Bill, you can go to the Michael J. Fox Foundation website, the American Parkinson's Association website, and you can contact me through email, jim@jhdenterprises.com, and I will put you in touch with Bill.
And ESPNFounder.com.
And ESPNFounder.com, and Bill's first book, Sports Fans Rejoice, The Birth of ESPN, is still available at ESPNFounder.com or at Amazon.com. If you're looking for any other information, feel free to give me a call, cell phone, or text at 215-266-5943. My email is jim@jhdenterprises.com, and my website is jimdelorenzo.com. I look forward to hearing your questions, any stories that you would like to tell. I enjoy hearing your stories, so please get in touch, and we'll hopefully have you on press conference sometime in the near future. Thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Bill Rasmussen, and we'll all see you again very, very soon.